You've heard it all your life, and not just from your mother, although you probably did hear it from your mother. You have such a great voice. Did you ever think of doing voiceover? Let's demystify this fun, flexible industry here on the VoiceOver Pod with Justine Reiss, brought to you by Suchavoice. I'm Justine, and I'll be your host for the next 30 minutes or so, where we will talk to people that have sat in your shoes and then became successful in the voiceover industry. We'll talk to people who hire voiceover talent. We'll talk about recording, sound, auditioning, casting. We're going to share some stories, we're going to share some secrets, and then, who knows, you may be my next guest. Hello and welcome to the VoiceOver Pod with Justine Reiss as your host. I am super psyched to have my friend, my agent, and just an incredible human being, Wes Stevens from Vox USA. Do you still call it Vox USA or is it just Vox Inc.?
It's always been Vox Inc. Vox USA was because we couldn't get vox.com as a domain. And we did stuff. Like it was a different era of they didn't have all the .tvs, .biz, it was .com or .net, and vox.com and vox.net were not available. So we did not.
Right.
We became voxusa.net.
Right. And that it hasn't hurt you.
23 years later, here we are stuck with that domain. Anyway.
Okay. So anyway, we are very excited. Wes has a very deep roots in the industry of voiceover as an agent. And I really want you to tell your story of how you ended up at Vox and how you started, because I think it's so fascinating and it speaks to the tenacity of the industry when you can just stay with something, both as an agent, and then you have so much to offer and share with us about the changing evolution of the voiceover industry. So let's just get into it. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So let's definitely start with, how did you become interested in the industry of voiceover specifically as an agent, and tell us your coming up story. If I recall, you started as somebody's assistant, but tell us the story, Wes.
So it's not to say that I was like pining to be in voiceover in my teen years or something would make the story, I guess shinier. But the more authentic version is we'll go back to the beginning and then we'll get to the authentic part, which is not as quite as noble as we might like it to be. Grew up as a military brat all over the world, did a lot of artsy things, was definitely the creative kid in those environments, which made you a little bit of the outsider. And did a play at the end of high school and got that bug, a musical, The Pippin. I was a leading player. It was a lot of fun. And then I go to the University of Virginia. I do a musical there. Head of the drama department came and said, you really should at least minor in this. I was like, oh my God, who acts for a living? This is crazy. So that was a dumb move there. And then majored in commerce, double majored in finance and marketing, but was producing theater and dance and had a gallery those 4 years. So I was very involved in the arts and was finishing up. And I was interviewing with the May company to be a buyer.
Yeah.
All my friends were going to the banks. I did not enjoy the meet and greets at the banks. I was like, felt like the outsider. Was in the final round of interviews with the May company. And it was this VP who was very buttoned up. I think it was more like from the accounting or business affairs side of the equation. I suddenly knew in the interview I wasn't going to get the job. I just had a sense. And I thought, well, at least we can turn this into a learning moment. And I said, look, can we just stop? Like, I'm pretty sure I'm not getting this job and I'd like to know why. And the guy was a bit flustered and said, honestly, we think you're too creative. And I was devastated.
Wow.
Saw the head of the drama department, who had remained a friend and I had produced things for him. and saw a management professor who was very avant-garde, but just like the guy would have us read Billy Budd as a business case, like Herman Melville's novel, and wild stuff like that. And saw both of them because they were the kind of two mentors, and they independently of each other said, you know, you need to be a producer, like that's what you are. And the one professor who had come out of the film business, the head of the drama department, said, I said, well, how do I do that? And he's like, go become an agent. He's like, it's the perfect way to learn the business. So then I had some relationships through the university in New York. So I went to New York, and the best meeting there was with Jack Rollins, the very famous manager at the time. I think he had Woody Allen and David Letterman, and I don't know if he's still alive, right? He was pretty,
Yeah.
so he may have not been nearly as old as I felt like he was at the time, but again, and it may be cinematic, but my recollection of the meeting was that he bit the end of a cigar off. I don't know where in my mind, he spit it out on the floor. In reality, he probably put it in an ashtray. And he said, who do you know, kid? And I said, no one. And he said, that's bad. And the meeting was over. And that stuck with me because our business is a networking business. It's a connection business. It's about who you know. And it's always going to be that way. And so then I moved back to Ohio where my parents were, and my father's like, get a job after, was hanging out, and they were like, come on, get a job. So I called up a little talent agency in Columbus, Ohio, and said, because I remembered what this Bob Chapel, the head of the drama department at UVA, had said. And I was like, hey, do you guys need an intern? And they were like, yeah. So I went in, I interned for 1 or 2 days. And they were like, oh, wow, they saw something. And they said to me, and this is the part that's not very noble. They said, do you want to start our voiceover department? And I said, well, what's that? And they explained, and I said, well, that's not very glamorous. I don't think I want to do that. And they said, and I had no interest, like I had zero.
And this is Columbus, Ohio.
This is in Columbus, Ohio. And they said, do you want to get paid? I'm like, here we go. And
let's find the glamour. Let's find the glamour.
That's how it started. So it's not like, and it's funny because over the years we've interviewed assistants and people. And if someone walks in our office, it's one thing if they walk in the office and say, I have all this experience in voiceover and I fall in love with it. And I really want to make a move to the agent side, or I really want to be within the rep side. I would believe that.
Okay.
I literally have not hired people because they've walked in like fresh out of college or school or new to the assistant realm. They're like, I really want to be in voiceover. And I'm always like, Tom, we can't hire them. They're a liar. Like there's nobody. I understand that in front of the mic scenario, but the behind the mic scenario, I don't think any of us came to this in a direct path. Like I don't, I don't, and I have a real intolerance for mistruths. So, I would respect someone more. It's like, I don't really know much about it, but it seems fun. And I've done a little research. Company's been around a bit. You guys seem kind of, not traditional Hollywood. And, I hear more and more about it, and like, oh, all right, that I can believe and that I can buy. And here we go. Let's see how it works. But anyway, so I worked there for about a year, maybe a year and a half. And I was booking like, Ross Perot impressions from Robin Leach. And I was doing, like all sorts of, and I found a niche that like, there was this company out of Canada that did all the Ginsu knife commercials and stuff like that. And I was like, and they needed all these languages. So I would go to the language department at Ohio State and be like, hey, do you got someone who's got a dramatic flair but can speak Tagalog? Or do you have someone who's got a dramatic flair can speak Japanese? And they would find me these kids who were like that drama kid in the Japanese department, and they would come, and our recording setup was literally like a cassette recorder with a little mic, and then be like, okay, go. And
I love it.
Let's just say all the scripts are like, Ginsu knife, so it's like, I'm like, I think you need to punch it up a bit, like pop the product a little more. Like, so that was how it started. And then a coach named Maurice Tobias.
Oh, yes.
This is the dawn of my love affair with coaching, which I believe is essential in our business.
We're going to talk about that a bunch. Yep.
Yeah, I'm proud of what you've created within your career for that. So it's imperative. But so Maurice was one of the best coaches. It was like pre-internet. She was one of the best in the country, and she did it all in person. And she had an incredible technique, and was the first woman to ever win a Clio. And she's quite an individual. And so she spotted some talent in me. Was like, "What are you doing here? We gotta get you out of here." And I had a lunch with her because I represented a woman who did a lot of political ads, Pam Conley, and Pam turned me on to Reese, and Reese and I got this call about several months later. There's this agency looking for an assistant, and I flew out, met with a company called Talent Group. They took forever to hire me, down to the point where they called me like, "Are you still available?" I'm like, "Oh, I have a number of offers at the table." I had nothing. I was
TGI. That was TGI, right?
I was TGI, and that was 30. I arrived in LA on New Year's Eve. I never really, is New Year's Eve? So I started on the 3rd of January, 1995. So New Year's Eve, 1995, I guess would be it. I don't know. Don't know what. Yeah, because that's the eve of 95. Okay.
That's when I arrived in 95 also to LA. So yeah.
There we go. Crazy. So yeah, I arrived on January 3rd, 1995, started this job as an assistant at Talent Group. I was an assistant there I left briefly, went to ICM, came back, like really briefly, like 2 weeks. It was hell. And was in TV packaging, and then came back, and I became an agent about a year and a half later, a little over a year. I bought the company from TGI and turned it into Vox. I think 7 years in. Yeah, that's about right. Yep. Somewhere in between. In the middle of that, I became a partner. I was only a partner for a couple of years, maybe a year and a half. That was right around the time of the massive commercial strike we had back then, which changed the industry. In that was the moment we taught advertising how to do non-union work. Like that was the turning point. That genie has never gone back in the bottle.
Yep.
And that's a lot of what I think has allowed a more democratic, open voiceover community. It was not an open field back then. It was very tight. I mean, the internet there was a number of things that created obstacles. Home recording wasn't being done. The internet didn't exist yet. I mean, it did, but not on a prolific level. The technology to do what we do now from home didn't exist.
But there's still I think there's some old thought patterns when I talk to people about, they still get stuck in those things that they heard all the time, like, too competitive, can't get into it, because it was that way. It was a closed circle, as Wes is saying. But let's talk about.
Well, and agencies like mine, I mean, I'll just be honest, I have every interest in perpetuating those myths because it's good for my business, you know? And if that doesn't exist on some level, then there's no need for, we can dive deeper into that. There will always be a need for an agent, but it changes the dynamic a bit. And I don't think it's a terrible thing. I do think there are tiers of experience and tiers. Look, it's a performance industry. So just like sports are a performance-based industry, you pick your performance-based industry, and there's talent, there's skill, there's amateur skills, there's novice skills. I think novice below, then amateur, and then there's professional skills, and then there's, there's the top percentiles.
Yeah.
That exists in the voiceover market as much as I think voiceover is tricky because it is perceived as easy.
Yes.
And I've seen it. Like
now that they can buy a microphone and do voiceover, and I am out in the world, through Such a Voice, really teaching that is absolutely not the case if you really want to do it. So there's a few things that I think I'd really love to pull some threads on. Certainly the evolution of the agency with you were on the cutting edge, on the forefront of encouraging people to be recording from home. I remember when you put into place the online scheduling. And
That's cool that you remember that, because that's correct. That was
and it was to save the time of your, to be more efficient with your staff. So talk a little bit about how that went to home recording studios, maybe a little evolution of that.
Yes, I mean, when I began in LA, let's start there. I made the joke about the little recording machine, but that was how people did it. It wasn't. So then
I still turn around my first demo on a cassette tape. Of course, I still have it.
And then CDs, and then it's crazy. When I started in LA, we recorded on reel to reel, and then at the end of the day, we had to transfer everything to cassette. And the cassettes had to be dropped into the mail. Never mail. It was always either FedEx, Messenger. And so your volume of what you could handle was pretty tight. And partially just because you had to transfer stuff in real time at the end of the day to try and meet a 5 or 6 o'clock FedEx deadline. It was insanity.
Yeah. I was the voicecaster in those days. That I did the same thing you did, and you knocked on the door at the agency. I knocked on the door at the voicecaster. I'm like, hey, can you hire me? And I was a booth operator, so I had to do all that. And it's really, I love having this history in a way between, and I think you too.
I don't miss that.
I don't miss that. I just love that I experienced it now,
my first assistant job, they didn't even have they were not using they were still using Rolodexes. And that wasn't like crazy, but I was like, oh, we could put this on a computer and we can use databases. Well, what's that? And, and we can, and so I was one of you who did that for them. And then, so then you transition to, we moved to first we moved to the DATs, which allowed a little more, but DAT still moves like a reel.
Yeah.
Still had to move through the DAT to get to the sound. It was not nonlinear yet.
Right.
Then we moved to hard drives, but very small hard drives, like we had an Akai. And we spent a fortune on our, and that was still at TGI.
Yep.
And then, but you still have limitations with the Akai, and it was still a pain. We still weren't where we are today. And then somewhere in that, like the day would go, all of the auditions would come in, and they would come in from casting directors, which there's less and less of those in our sector.
Yep.
And there was a handful of casting directors, and they kind of ran the really big ticket voiceover stuff, but almost all went through them.
Yep.
And their stuff would come in, and you'd be juggling those appointments and getting those out to the talent, and you'd be calling them. And it was, the end of the day scheduling was a stack of papers and juggling all these times. And it was stressful and kind of fun. It was like a Tetris. And then in the middle, and then on top of that, you had projects that had come in from ad agencies were like, we need this type of voice, and the agents would cast those and put the names down. This is all on paper. That's the other part.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And scripts are paper clipped to them, and got the parts and here and there. And so then at the end of the day, setting up for the next day, you had all your out of house stuff that you put the calls out, you're confirming, and then you were applying back to the ad agency. Yeah, so-and-so's confirmed. So-and-so can't make it. Can we? And it was always you never just call and say, so-and-so can't make it. You always call saying, oh, so-and-so's got a conflict. How about so-and-so? And you had to be like, because you never was like,
pitching. Right.
Some of this,
because it was fun, and I miss the lobbies. I miss sitting in your lobby and seeing people and seeing you, and that's the part that we miss, that we've had to replace.
I also miss that. That's where some of the relationship aspects in the business have disappeared. And that one of the things that existed was if you had tremendous integrity and talent at casting as an agent and really knew your client list, the casting directors would trust you.
Sure.
Okay, great. I'd love to see them. down to on the animation side, I think I never sent anyone. I never sent the wrong person in. I don't mean that like I'm being cocky. Took it really seriously.
Yeah.
And I sent really good ideas in to the point where certain casting directors, if they were in a bind, would cast a client off of my recommendation. Unheard of. Does not happen today. Like it's just, it's, and I miss some of that. So then at the end of the day, we had to like collate all these scripts and make packets for each client, and they were alphabetized at the front desk so the receptionist could give those out so people could prepare to go in the booth and read their stuff. I mean, this whole process is linear. So maybe you had 2-3 booths. Those booths could only record one person every 10 minutes. If the person in the booth wasn't so great, needed 20 takes, like now you're behind. And now, you know, we were always pretty good at keeping our wait time under an hour. We heard of competitors who had 2+ hour waits. And I'd look at the clients when we meet with them and I'd be like, I got a word for you, man. Like dignity. Like I get maybe you'd wait 2+ hours for a cancer doctor or something that like is the best in the world, but this shit, that's just not.
You know, keep in mind, anyone listening out there, that this is in Los Angeles, so you might have taken an hour to get wherever you were going to wait another 2 hours, you know?
And you probably had other stuff to do. You probably had other auditions and so anyway, so we kept it pretty tight. But so I'm sitting there one day, I think the online casting was just, look, I mean, my background, I went to a good school. I had a good degree in business. I was always very entrepreneurial. I always looked at systems and processes and how we can make business models more efficient, how we can make the profit margins greater,
right,
how we could keep the staff tight and not have redundant positions. And so some of that was like this process of this analog process of casting and the casting still had to be done kind of analog, but the process of like creating these packets, putting all the calls out, none of that made sense. So we created a system 20 some years ago called, what do we go?
There was, I don't even remember the name, but
it's sigilling. That's what we called it.
Sigilling, right? Because you could get your sides on. Everything was online. It was so okay. We're gonna get too bogged down in this. It was a really.
Anyway, we did that. So that cuts to basically then one day I'm walking by the lobby, some like not immediately, but within a couple of years, and the technology had to catch up. Like we had to be in a place where where email and like we had crossed from telephone. I mean, you would come back from lunch in those days and have 40 voicemail messages. Different era. We crossed over into the email era. We crossed over into the internet and applications, and just the technology existed where microphones, you didn't need to build a full-size booth. We were in a place where I walked by the lobby and I'm like, why are we running a coffee shop for, people to sit in for an hour? And then we also learned some time ago, the casting process is not a democratic process. It is about who gets the best reads in first. Mm. So if you think that a casting director is waiting till the deadline they posted, you are wrong. Mm. They will book before all the auditions are in, which is horrifying to people to hear. Like, they're like, what? But my audition should be heard. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Like, they're going to listen. And this is where the agency gatekeeping still exists. And that I think, I'm not saying everything, Bob's had some pretty big ticket opportunities. If they know that my office consistently sends best in class reads, they're going to listen to my stuff first, especially because we get it in before a lot of our competitors. Mm-hmm. And, we don't even put out we don't even put out deadlines that are, the deadline we share with our clients is often a day or two earlier than the one we received from the casting director or from the buyer. I mean, just like, cause I'm not gonna, I want the gig. I want to be as competitive as possible. And so, we know they cast, cause we book things that are prior to the deadline. And so we know that like those people that are reading after that, like they're not in my agency, but they're not getting considered.
Well, I want anyone that is listening to this to know that this is probably true about all auditioning across the country. Even if you're not working with an agency, watch those deadlines and get your stuff in. Don't wait till the last minute. That's a very
Get
good.
in early. Like, turn it around. Do the 24-hour turnaround. Do same day turnaround if you can. I mean,
So
you go crazy. But
I want to kind of like speed up. We kind of know how things have changed. Talk about what it is in this day and age for you to even take on a new client. What do you need to see? What are you looking for? Especially, you don't have to have LA-based talent, even though the agency is in LA. So what are you looking for? Do you have niches that you feel sometimes you have a hole, or maybe somebody leaves the agency and you're like, you know what, we really could use another 30, 40s woman. How do you take on new talent?
the client list in an agency is very much like a portfolio. And it's a portfolio of talent. So it's diverse, but it is managed. We are aware of how deep we are in a particular category, and the depth of category depends on volume of opportunity. So some categories we're going to have less, some categories we're going to have more. And if we're well situated with someone who we really believe is a booker and has range, and you come along and you rate, chances are we're going to stick with our current roster more often than not, because we put the time and the money. We've already invested in those individuals. We've already been developing them, working with them, putting them out there. And we know their inventory of possibilities.
Yeah.
So that's obstacle one, is like, if we've already got conflicting talent, do we have space to represent several of those conflicts, because we want some variety for the buyer. The buyer has each of them is going to hear something different. And then it's going to start coming down to, first question we ask people is, do you have a home studio? What kind of equipment do you have? We want to know. Then we're super interested. I mean, like, in tandem, equal, but that's essential. Like, that's like almost like, if that's a no, then we're instantly not interested. Foreign folks, we're always going to ask, do you have a green card? Do you have a work visa? We just don't.
Even though they might be reporting out of the country, is that they still
matter. It's become insurmountable. Like, we just can't. It's the buyers don't want to jump through the hoops. So some kind of work visa or green card, or citizenship, obviously, and then then we're looking at experience. We're looking at, and if there's no, I don't have a demo, we're not interested. They're not taking it seriously. If we hear the demo, the conversation is, what's been going on? What kind of numbers are you booking? Money wise, deal wise, what kind of stuff are you booking? How's the demo sound? And in the demo, like, everyone thinks we listen to the whole demo. We know if the sound is there and if the chops are there within 10 seconds. I think probably no more than 10 seconds, 10, 20 seconds of listening to the demo. You're like, doesn't have it. It's not there. Like, if your lead off is not a hook, I'm like, first of all, like, you don't give a shit enough to, pardon my French, but you don't care enough to hook me. Like, why would you think that lackluster, non-professional, and what one person considers professional on another can be pretty far apart. And
Sure.
if you've not gone and listened to the demos of the best in class talent in market to see if you are, and get real with yourself, like, am I there? So if you listen to that stuff, you're like, I'm not there yet. That doesn't mean you don't belong in the voiceover market, because I think there's different tiers in the marketplace, where there's regional stuff they don't have the money to afford the guy who's top of field, but that stuff's still got to get voiced. The stuff's going up on the, some of it's going up locally through local agents. Some of it's going up on the, the voiceover, platforms, the clearinghouses that are the casting platforms, but there's all different tiers of price points. And then, and then there's more regional stuff that's going to look for a little bit better voice that might have enough of a budget to go for the top of the line, and on up until you get to top tier, voice people who are making 6 and 7 figures at voiceovers. And frankly, they can pick up any script and make it sound and do something magical with it.
You know, that
down to, that comes down to point of view, that comes down to intelligence. But, great voiceover actors are highly intelligent. Like I'm doing this 30 years. I know what works and what doesn't work. The really talented voiceover people are super smart. It just comes through in the voice. I don't necessarily know why. It just does. I think the human ear and mind can hear our fellow man's mind at work. We can hear the authenticity. We can hear the subtext. This is why I think AI is fascinating, but I don't know if it's ever going to be able to replicate that organic aspect of the mind at work. The engagement, the deep engagement of the mind at work is inescapable. There's a great story, like Maurice used to tell this story about, someone had been cast for, I think it was like Bush beer, and ad agencies all super excited about this person, and I'll tell you, this is hearsay. I'll tell you a real one that I know for sure. And so then finally, like they get to like Adolf Bush or whatever, and he's like, this woman doesn't like beer, and they're like, what? And they're like, ends up she doesn't drink, like, so they kill it, like, but no one could hear it but him. So I had a guy.
He heard her and said she doesn't like beer.
He heard the read. He's like, that woman doesn't like beer, and he knew it wasn't authentic. Like, and they say that. So this is imperative. Love is, a lot of people say love is the highest vibration. There is a vibration higher than love, and that is as a frequency, and that is authenticity. Authenticity vibrates at a higher vibration than love.
If you want to learn more about what it takes to become a working voiceover actor, come to an intro class or schedule a voice evaluation with Justine. You can contact her at Justine Reiss at suchavoice.com. That's JUSTINEREISS at suchavoice.com. Or check out our website at suchavoice.com. If you like the podcast, subscribe to this channel or leave a review. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.